Ready for a nostalgic journey through the homes of yesteryear? Join us as we uncover forgotten gadgets from the mid-century, revisit the iconic and sometimes questionable design trends that define the 1980s, and rediscover the charming and practical architectural details that once gave houses so much character. From flamethrowers for snow and futuristic refrigerators to mauve walls, glass blocks, hidden laundry chutes, and milk doors, prepare to be amazed, amused, and perhaps reminded of homes you once knew. Let's step back inside the past. Refrigerator, stove, sink, all in one. Talk about packing it all in. Imagine your fridge, stove, and your kitchen sink combined into one single, compact unit. Pretty wild, right? Back when these combo appliances first came out, saving precious floor space was definitely the goal, especially for smaller living spaces. Maybe energy efficiency wasn't the biggest concern back then, but boy, did these clever units ever make the most of every inch. You can totally see why this kind of all-in-one thinking is perfect for today's tiny homes or RVs maximum function with a tiny footprint. A neat approach to efficient living. General Electric wall refrigerator freezer. You know, back in the 1950s, kitchens were really starting to get streamlined and stylish. People wanted things to look built-in, clean, and modern. General Electric jumped right on that trend in 1955 with something pretty clever, their wall refrigerator freezer. Now, picture this. Instead of the usual big, boxy fridge taking up floor space, this unit hung right on the wall. It was designed to look just like another kitchen cabinet. You could literally hide your refrigerator in plain sight, making the whole kitchen feel more open and less cluttered. Imagine folks coming over and wondering where you kept the cold drinks, only to have you open what looked like a cupboard door to reveal the fridge. This wasn't just about looking cool, though. It combined both the refrigerator and a freezer section into one wall-mounted appliance. A fantastic solution, especially for kitchens where space was tight. It completely changed the game from those hulking, standalone refrigerators that really dominated a room. This GE unit allowed for that seamless, integrated look that was becoming so popular. It showed that appliances weren't just about function anymore. They were becoming a key part of home design and style, blending technology right into the living space. Definitely a forward-thinking idea back then. Electric can opener with knife sharpener. Alright, picture this. Rows and rows of canned goods lining the pantry shelves. That was a common sight back in the day. And parked proudly on the kitchen counter was often an electric can opener, a real game changer compared to wrestling with those manual ones, right? Just locking the can in place and hearing that motor where it opened felt like modern magic, making dinner prep that much easier, especially when cans were such a big part of meals. But here's the kicker that made these gadgets extra clever. Many of them had a built-in knife sharpener, usually a little slot on the back or side. Remember that distinctive buzzing or grinding sound when mom or grandma would quickly swipe their kitchen knives through it. Suddenly, a dull blade was ready for slicing onions or whatever else needed chopping. It was such a practical, two-for-one deal. Why clutter the counter with separate tools when one sturdy appliance could handle both opening cans and keeping your knives sharp? It really speaks to that resourceful mindset. While maybe not as common today, that electric can opener that also sharpened your knives was a hard-working staple in countless kitchens. What's one clever idea from a vintage appliance you secretly wish they'd bring back today? Let us know. Electro-Kef Combo Kitchen Heavyweight. Remember squeezing into those tight apartment kitchens back in the day? Well, appliance makers got creative, and one standout was the Electro-Kef Combo. Get this. It was your refrigerator and your stove, all bundled into one single unit. Talk about a space saver, perfect for folks who didn't have much room to spare. Now, while it saved on floor space, it sure didn't skimp on weight. This thing was a beast, weighing around 500 pounds. You definitely needed a couple of buddies to help move it. But the real charm was packing so much utility into one spot. It was like having a mini command center for your cooking. Some of those old ads even boasted it could defrost, bake, and cook all at the same time, quite the multitasker. And here's a neat little feature. Some models had a revolving shelf inside the oven to make sure everything baked evenly. It's those clever touches, you know? Plus, they often had that cool, sleek mid-century modern look that fit right in with the times. Heavy, yes, but incredibly practical and stylish for compact living. Ronson can opener and other functions. Alright, let's talk about kitchen gadgets that really tried to earn their counter space back in the day. Have you ever heard of the Ronson can opener? Now, calling it just a can opener is kind of selling it short. This thing was more like the kitchen equivalent of a Swiss Army knife. Sure, its main gig was opening cans, got that part covered. But here's where it got interesting. You could swap out different attachments and transform it. Need to whip up some cake batter or beat egg whites? Snap on the whisk attachment. Making mashed potatoes? Yup, there was a masher head you could pop on. It even had a scrambler tool specifically for making scrambled eggs. How wild is that? It really tells you something about the times, doesn't it? Kitchen space was often at a premium, so having one motorized base that could do multiple jobs was incredibly practical. Saved clutter, saved effort. While we have specialized tools for everything now, you have to admire the ingenuity of packing so many functions into one handy appliance like the Ronson. Stovetop griddle and warming drawer. Okay, some old kitchen gadgets are just plain cool, and if you happen to have one of those vintage combo units, the stovetop with a built-in griddle and a warming drawer, you've got a real gem. Especially if it's still firing up, maybe passed down through the family. Picture this, weekend breakfast chaos. You're making stacks of pancakes or maybe some grilled cheese sandwiches right there on the flat griddle top. And the magic part? The first batch, or maybe some sausage links, stays perfectly toasty in the warming drawer nestled right underneath. Everything hits the table hot and ready together. It was such an incredibly practical idea, packing so much function into one convenient appliance. Really speaks to the smart thinking back then, designing things for real family life and kitchen efficiency, making sure everyone got a hot plate. You don't find these built-in wonders much anymore, which is kind of a shame. They're a charming reminder that sometimes the old ways of combining tasks were pretty brilliant, offering a cooking experience that feels both wonderfully nostalgic and genuinely useful even today. A true kitchen multitasker from another era. Thor Automagic Washer. Alright, let's talk laundry back in the 1950s, definitely not the push-button affair it is today. But innovations were popping up, like the Thor Automagic Washer. And this machine? It really stood out from the crowd. Forget your typical square white box. The Thor looked more like a giant, shiny metal orb, almost like something you'd see in a futuristic cartoon, ready to zap those grass stains away. They called it the Automagic, and it lived up to the name pretty well for its time. Unlike older washers that needed a lot of hands-on babysitting throughout the cycle, this one took over more of the steps automatically. That was a huge relief, freeing up precious time for folks running a busy household. But the really clever part was how it washed the clothes. Instead of that tall post agitator sticking up in the middle that we often saw, the Thor had its mechanism spinning around at the bottom of the tub. This different approach helped get the clothes and detergent mixed more evenly. Pretty forward-thinking, and you can see how it led towards the designs we have now. It wasn't just practical, it made a statement. That rounded, space-age look was a bold departure. The Thor Automagic was a sign of the changing times, offering a little bit of that promised future where machines ease the daily grind. Colston Dishwasher. Alright, let's journey back to the booming 1950s poodle skirts, tail fins, and kitchens buzzing with new ideas. Amidst all that excitement, there was this quirky little invention called the Colston dishwasher. Now, forget the built-in behemoths we have today. Picture something about the size of a decent bread box, maybe a hefty toaster oven. Believe it or not, this gadget sat right on your countertop. In an age leaning towards bigger is better, this compact cleaner was definitely marching to its own beat. Now, let's be clear, this wasn't the machine you'd load up after a big family get-together. Speed wasn't its strong suit, and capacity was, shall we say, modest. You couldn't just pile everything in and expect miracles in an hour. But for folks living in snug city apartments or houses with kitchens the size of a postage stamp, the Colston was a neat little helper. You'd run small batches, maybe a few plates and glasses at a time, letting it patiently do its thing over several cycles. Think of it less as a powerhouse and more as a dependable sidekick. It wasn't flashy, but it delivered a slice of modern convenience to places where space was tight and automatic dishwashing was still a novelty. The Colston remains a charming nod to simpler times and practical ingenuity, making do, one clean dish at a time. Tappan Fabulous 400. Picture the American home buzzing with post-war optimism, where style was king, even in the kitchen. That's when the Tappan Fabulous 400 arrived on the scene, not just as an appliance, but as a real head-turner. Tappan, already a name folks trusted, decided to completely rethink the cooking experience. And what a rethink it was. First off, forget bending over to peek into a hot oven. This revolutionary design brought the ovens right up to eye level, two beautiful stainless steel ovens with full glass doors. Made checking on that pot roast or casserole so much easier and safer, especially for busy moms juggling a household. But the real kicker? The smaller oven had a built-in electric rotisserie motor tucked away inside. Imagine, perfect, golden brown chicken, turning effortlessly while you did other things. Now, where were the burners? Cleverly hidden in a slide-out drawer. How sleek is that? Saved space and kept the kitchen looking sharp. And right above that drawer, Tappan added another brilliant touch, a fold-down maple cutting board. A cutting board, right on your stove. Often paired with a matching base cabinet for storage, the Fabulous 400 wasn't just about cooking. It was a stunning piece of kitchen furniture way ahead of its time, blending elegance with everyday practicality. It really made you proud of your kitchen. Admiral Tele-Bar. Alright, let's talk mid-century cool. If you really wanted to show off back then, you needed something spectacular for your living room or den. Enter the Admiral Tele-Bar. Folks, this wasn't just another piece of furniture. It was basically the command center for any swinging party, all elegantly packed into one cabinet. Imagine having your entertainment and refreshments consolidated like this. It featured a respectable 21-inch television for catching the latest shows, a quality radio, and their fancy triple-play phonograph for spinning your favorite LPs. You could effortlessly switch from watching the evening news to putting on some mood music. But the real showstopper, the part that made jaws drop, tucked inside this handsome, hand-rubbed wood cabinet was a built-in bar. Seriously, it was properly designed too, with a liquor-proof finish very important, a shiny stainless steel mixing tray, and a dedicated shelf for serving up those cocktails. And check this out. It came equipped with racks to hold 32 glasses. Admiral even included the actual glassware in the deal. How great is that for instant hosting? Below deck, there was ample room for over 30 bottles, ensuring the good times could keep rolling all night long. The Tele-Bar was pure sophistication, designed to impress guests and make entertaining absolutely seamless. What a machine. We'd love to hear about the gadgets you remember from kitchens back in the day. Please share with us. Western Electric Picture Phone. You know how we all hop on Zoom or FaceTime calls now without even thinking twice? Well, picture this. Way back in the mid-20th century, the idea of actually seeing the person you were talking to on the phone was like something out of a futuristic movie. That was the dream behind the Western Electric Picture Phone. Western Electric, a big name in telephones even then, cooked up this groundbreaking device. It wasn't just about hearing Aunt Mildred from across the state. It was about seeing her smile, too. This gadget, though pretty hefty and maybe a bit awkward-looking by today's standards, was a real window into how we might connect in the future. However, the picture phone never quite became the next big thing in everyone's home. Why not? Well, for starters, these early video phones were bulky and cost a pretty penny. And maybe, just maybe, folks back then weren't entirely comfortable with the idea of being on camera during a casual phone chat. Felt a bit intrusive, perhaps? So, It mostly remained an experiment, a cool concept that didn't hit the mainstream. But hats off to Western Electric for dreaming big. They were the pioneers imagining a world connected by sight and sound, long before the internet made video calls an everyday thing. They truly planted the seeds for the way we communicate digitally today. Kelvinator Foodarama. Alright, let's step back into the 1950s kitchen, a time of real optimism and some seriously cool innovations. If you wanted the absolute top dog, the appliance that screamed modern living, you were looking at the Kelvinator Foodarama. Forget just keeping the milk cold. This thing was practically a status symbol, the Cadillac of refrigerators back in its day. What made it such a big deal? Well, first off, it pretty much introduced the side-by-side layout we all know now: freezer section on the left, fridge on the right. Sounds simple today, but back then? Revolutionary. It totally changed how people organized their kitchens. But Kelvinator didn't just stop there. They loaded the Foodarama with features that felt incredibly futuristic and convenient. The absolute showstopper had to be the built-in breakfast bar right inside the door. Imagine specific spots for eggs, removable containers for juice, everything you needed for the morning rush, right there. And the goodies kept coming. Crisper bins that tilted out smoothly so you weren't digging around for veggies, a dedicated butter keeper, plenty of freezer space, a big deal then. And those flashy chrome handles that just screamed style. Kelvinator cleverly sold this not just as a fridge, but as a key piece for a better lifestyle, making the kitchen more of a comfortable living space rather than just a work zone. It's no surprise that collectors go nuts for these vintage Foodaramas today. They weren't just appliances, they were a glimpse into the future of the American kitchen. Salad spinner and gourmet salad set. You know how sometimes you look back at old kitchen gadgets and just have to chuckle? Well, the vintage salad spinner is definitely one of those. Forget today's sleek designs, these were often clunky plastic things, maybe an avocado green or that bright creamsicle orange, looking more like a Fisher-Price toy than something for making dinner. But, believe it or not, they did the job. Mostly. It was often a kid's job, right? You'd sit on the kitchen floor, grip that plastic handle, and crank that spinner like you were trying to start a stubborn lawnmower, sending water flying. It was less about efficiency and more about giving a kid something to do, maybe burn off some energy before dinner. There was a certain charm to that manual effort, wasn't there? And then, sometimes paired with the spinner, was the so-called gourmet salad set. This usually involved a hefty wooden block with a special little hollow carved out to hold the head of lettuce just right. And the tool to chop it? A seriously sharp, curved blade that looked suspiciously like something out of a medieval movie. Honestly, hacking away at a head of iceberg with that thing might have been strangely therapeutic after a long day. Quite different from just tearing open a bag of pre-washed greens, that's for sure. Manual ice crusher and Tele-Bar. You know, hosting a get-together back in the 1950s had its own special flair, especially when cocktails were part of the evening. And a couple of inventions from that time really catered to that entertaining spirit. First up, the trusty manual ice crusher. Remember those sturdy little contraptions? Often made of gleaming metal, sometimes colorful plastic, with a definite hand crank you had to put some muscle into. You'd feed it ice cubes, turn that handle, and grind crunch out came that perfect crushed ice. Essential for so many classic drinks back then. While it was definitely meant for the bar setup, let's be honest, kids probably loved getting their hands on it too, making super cold juice or fancy sodas just for the fun of it. It was a simple gadget, but satisfyingly effective. Then, for the truly sophisticated host, there was the amazing Tele-Bar. Now this was the ultimate party centerpiece. Imagine a beautiful cabinet sitting elegantly in the living room or den. But open it up and surprise. It wasn't just storage, it was the complete entertainment headquarters. Inside, you'd find a television, a stereo system ready for mood music, and a proper, fully stocked bar area ready for mixing drinks. Everything needed to keep guests happy and entertained, all cleverly tucked away in one impressive piece of furniture. It was the height of mid-century style and convenience. So, from the basic ice crusher to the all-in-one Tele-Bar, These gadgets perfectly capture that 50s vibe of embracing leisure and the art of playing host. The beanery, aka crockpot. Alright, let's talk about a kitchen workhorse many of us rely on, the slow cooker. Most folks just call it the crockpot, right? But here's a fun fact. That super popular appliance actually got its start under a different, much more specific name, the Naxxon beanery. The story goes back to an inventor named Irving Naxxon. He apparently had fond memories of his grandmother's amazing Lithuanian bean soup, the kind that needed to simmer nice and slow all day long. So he created this clever little electric pot specifically designed for that gentle, long cooking process. It was basically a ceramic crock surrounded by a low-heat element, perfect for setting it and forgetting it, which was a pretty big deal for home cooks back in the mid-20th century looking for convenience. Fast forward to 1971. A different company bought Naxxon's business, saw the huge potential in this simple cooker, and decided to give it a catchier, broader name, the Crockpot. And what a move that was. That name stuck like glue, becoming the go-to term for pretty much any slow cooker. It's kind of funny, though people who knew the original beanery might have seen the Crockpot hit the shelves and thought it was some totally new invention, when really it was the same great idea, just smartly repackaged. Really shows you how powerful a good name can be. When fridges wore colors. You know, walk into most kitchens today, and what do you see? Stainless steel, maybe black or white appliances, right? Everything sleek, blends in. But gosh, rewind a few decades, say, back to the 50s, 60s, even into the 70s, and kitchens were a whole different story, especially when it came to the refrigerator. Back then, the fridge wasn't just a box to keep food cold. It was often the star of the show, a real statement piece. Forget blending in. These things were meant to pop. We're talking bright yellows, soft blues, maybe a cheerful pink, and who could forget that classic avocado green or harvest gold? Those refrigerators brought so much personality to the heart of the home. You look at old ads, and it's like a rainbow of choices so different from today's limited options. What was behind it? Well, manufacturing got better, allowing for these durable, vibrant finishes. Plus, people just wanted to express themselves more in their home decor. Having a colorful fridge was a sign you were modern, optimistic, and definitely not afraid of a little pizzazz. While things eventually swung back towards more neutral tones, you have to admit, there was something fun about those bold appliance colors. There's certainly collector's items now, reminding us of a time when kitchens dared to be a bit more playful. Sunbeam Mighty Mixmaster. Okay, if there was one appliance that felt like the heart of baking in countless mid-century American kitchens, it had to be the Sunbeam Mixmaster. This wasn't just a mixer. For many families, it was the mixer. Forget tiring out your arm with a wooden spoon. This sturdy stand mixer took the hard work out of creaming butter and sugar, whipping egg whites into peaks, or kneading dough for Saturday morning cinnamon rolls. These machines were built like tanks, often in classic white or chrome, but later bursting out in those great 50s and 60s colors like turquoise or sunny yellow. They usually came with two different sized glass bowls that rotated, and those distinctive beaters were easy to pop out for cleaning. Many models even allowed the whole mixing head to detach, turning it into a powerful hand mixer. It was a real workhorse, often the centerpiece of birthday cake preparations or holiday cookie marathons. Mom or grandma probably swore by hers, and many of these reliable machines are probably still working today. A true kitchen icon. Retractable stovetops. Alright, let's talk about a kitchen innovation that seemed like pure genius at the time. Retractable stovetops. Remember those? They came in different styles and colors, trying to fit right into your kitchen decor. The big idea was incredible, especially if you had a smaller kitchen or just hated countertop clutter. When you weren't cooking, the entire electric cooktop would just slide away, usually into a drawer or a special cabinet compartment, like magic. Suddenly, you had all this extra counter space back for chopping veggies or just keeping things tidy. It sounded fantastic, didn't it? These were typically sleek, electric units, adding a real modern touch. The concept was brilliant: cook when you need it, hide it when you don't. But here's where the dream often hit a snag: the actual slide-out mechanism, the drawer itself. Over time, those things could be finicky. They'd get stuck, break, or just become a real pain to operate smoothly. So what happened? Well, instead of being neatly tucked away, the stovetop often ended up permanently stuck in the out position, completely defeating the whole space-saving purpose and sometimes even getting in the way. A really clever idea in theory, but the execution back then just wasn't quite reliable enough to make it stick around. Snow melting flame gun. Okay, we're stepping away from the kitchen for this wild gadget, but it's too intriguing to skip. Are you tired of that back-breaking snow shoveling every winter? Well, picture this alternative: tackling the drifts not with muscle, but with fire. Yes, folks, the snow-melting flame gun. Essentially, it was a handheld flamethrower designed specifically to blast away snow and stubborn ice from driveways and sidewalks. Instead of hours of shoveling, you could just point, shoot, and melt a path. Sounds pretty awesome in a slightly terrifying way, right? Now, obviously, waving a flamethrower around your property comes with some serious O's. Safety was absolutely critical, and let's be honest, it probably wasn't the greenest or most practical solution out there for clearing your walkway. You really had to know what you were doing to avoid setting the hedges ablaze. Still, you've got to hand it to the sheer boldness of the concept. Instead of wrestling with a shovel, just unleash the flames. Fighting winter with fire, it definitely gets your attention, even if it wasn't the most sensible tool for the job. Hey everyone, remember the 80s? It wasn't just a decade, it was a whole vibe, especially in our homes. We ditched the 70s earth tones for bold colors, new textures, and maybe questionable choices. From Hollywood lights to teal carpet, it was memorable. Ready for a quick trip down memory lane? Let's dive into the iconic home trends of the totally awesome 80s. Laura Ashley floral bedding, drowning in ditzy prints. Entering an 80s girl's bedroom often meant stepping into a floral world dominated by Laura Ashley. Her signature patterns on bedding, curtains, and wallpaper weren't just popular, they were practically a mandate for achieving peak feminine charm. Think total floral immersion. Designs were characterized by their delicate, romantic feel, featuring dainty ruffles, soft pastel backgrounds like dusty rose or powder blue, and surfaces densely covered with small-scale ditzy prints, tiny roses or sprigs. The overall effect was intensely feminine, cozy, and evoked a romanticized vision of cottage life. Her collections ruled department store bedding sections and mail-order catalogs throughout the decade. Mothers embraced its traditional sweetness, while teenage girls adored its pretty, dreamy quality, making it the definitive style for creating cozy retreats. Matching sets were key. Comforter, pillow shams, bed skirt, and coordinating curtains were required for the full look. Hollywood reflected this ubiquity. Watch Kim Basinger lounging on characteristic florals in My Stepmother is an Alien, 1988. It's pure 80s bedroom essence. While contemporary tastes lean more minimalist, there's undeniable sweet nostalgia attached to that full-blown floral flair, representing comfort, familiarity, and a specific brand of 80s femininity. Beyond the bedroom blooms, what pattern dominated your 80s living room? Florals, geometrics, or maybe just solid mauve? Tell us about your quintessential 80s couch. Novelty phones, quirky communication centerpieces. Before smartphones, the humble landline was a crucial fixture, especially for teenagers whose social lives revolved around it. The fun wasn't merely the endless chats conducted while stretching those incredibly long, coiled receiver cords across rooms, inevitably ending in tangled messes and pleas from family needing the line. The real excitement, the true status symbol, lay in the novelty phone. Forget the standard issue beige or black models. The 80s unleashed a glorious wave of phones designed to look like anything but a phone. Chat on giant red lips, hold Garfield the cat, cradle Snoopy on his doghouse, pick up a sleek race car, or even dial on a cheeseburger. These phones were vibrant, deliberately quirky, instant conversation starters, and just undeniably cool. Owning one declared your personality. If you didn't have one, you likely spent hours circling favorites in the glossy Sears, Wish book, or JC Penney Christmas catalog, leaving strategic hints. Privacy was laughable, of course, with shared lines and the constant threat of eavesdropping or being told to get off. Despite these limits, novelty phones injected huge fun and personality into communication, transforming a utility into playful pop culture decor that perfectly captured the 80s expressive side. Venetian and vertical blinds, slats, snags, and sunlight struggles. Beyond heavy drapes, the other dominant 80s window treatments were Venetian and vertical blinds. Venetian blinds, with classic horizontal slats, were staples, but unlike today's resilient versions, 80s Venetians were typically thin, flimsy metal, usually aluminum. While offering a sleek, modern look in various colors, their fragility was legendary. An accidental tug, pet paw, or vacuum bump could easily bend the delicate slats permanently, leaving unsightly kinks. Then there were vertical blinds, another major trend, favored for large expanses like patio doors or picture windows. These long, hanging slats provided a clean, contemporary look. Appealing in theory for adjustable light control, they had practical annoyances. Airflow from vents made them sway, twist, and clatter noisily, compromising light blockage. Furthermore, the mechanisms, especially the plastic hooks and bottom chains, were notoriously prone to breaking, leading to dangling slats and frustration. Though improved versions exist today, the 80s iterations often felt like a constant battle against malfunction and fragility, despite being key to the modern 80s interior. Thinking about 80s windows, besides blinds or florals, what was hanging in your house? Macrame plant hangers? Something else uniquely 80s? Let's hear about those window-adjacent treasures. Glass blocks, the shimmering walls of modernity. All right, let's talk glass blocks. Those thick, heavy squares of wavy, translucent glass truly materialized everywhere in the 80s. You'd find them forming shower enclosures, creating stylish partitions between rooms like kitchens and dining areas, framing front doors as sidelights, or even constructing entire feature walls. Their unique ability to let ample light flow through while providing visual privacy, thanks to that signature rippled texture, made them scream modern and upscale. But here's a fascinating fact. Glass blocks weren't an 80s invention. Their history dates back to the late 1800s for industrial use. The 80s simply grabbed this utilitarian material and gave it a major dose of glamour for residential chic. Homeowners loved how they could define zones and open floor plans without closing them off, keeping spaces feeling airy and bright. That distinctive frosted, slightly distorted view became incredibly fashionable, seen as both practical and pleasing. Hollywood embraced the look too. Watch the 80s classic, Look Who's Talking, and you'll spot those unmistakable glass block walls setting the contemporary scene. This wasn't just a fleeting fad either. Their popularity endured throughout the 80s and well into the 90s decor trends. It's remarkable how these hefty blocks became such an iconic and instantly recognizable hallmark of 80s design. Metal wall sculptures, the shine and shape of 80s art. Cast your mind back to 80s homes, and you'll likely recall prominent metal wall sculptures in living rooms or hallways. These weren't subtle, often quite large and intended as statement art. They were incredibly popular. Common motifs featured soaring flocks of birds, geese and seagulls seemed favored, abstract arrangements resembling stylized branches or leaves, or radiating sunburst designs, often mixing textures. These sculptures brought metallic drama to walls, typically finished to look like brass, copper, or chrome, reflecting light and adding visual interest. While mostly two-dimensional, overlapping or bent elements often gave them a sense of depth and texture, enough for that desirable wow factor. Finding a natural home in contemporary houses, their appeal was broad. A significant part of their popularity stemmed from easy decorating. Hang one large, eye-catching piece on a blank wall, and voila, the space felt finished. They were bold, undeniably attention-grabbing, and slotted perfectly into the slightly flashy 80s aesthetic. However, their beauty had a practical downside. Keeping them clean was notoriously difficult. All those intricate shapes and overlapping sections were prime dust territory, making dusting a genuinely tedious chore. Yet, this inconvenience hardly deterred anyone then. These metallic artworks were embraced as affordable symbols of contemporary style. Honey oak cabinets, the golden glow of 80s kitchens. Oh, the inescapable honey oak cabinets. Picture a standard 1980s kitchen, and these golden-hued wood cabinets almost certainly come to mind. Whether in new construction or renovations, they were the default choice, specified by builders and embraced by homeowners seeking a modern look. They were absolutely everywhere, gleaming in friends' houses or starring on TV sitcoms. At the time, honey oak felt fresh and stylish. It was known for durability, was relatively affordable, and undeniably made kitchens feel brighter and more welcoming. Those characteristic orange and yellow undertones in the prominent grain paired perfectly with other 80s staples like patterned linoleum flooring and pastel walls or floral borders. However, like many 80s trends, the honey oak aesthetic hasn't aged gracefully for everyone. Seeing a full kitchen of them today instantly evokes strong nostalgia. You can almost smell the hairspray. While some are cleverly painting or refinishing them for a modern update, for many, these cabinets remain a potent, sometimes loud reminder of a design era that fully embraced warmth and visible wood grain. They are a true symbol of the 80s kitchen, representing both its style and its eventual datedness. Pastel wall colors and the reign of mauve. If 80s walls weren't wallpapered, likely floral or stripe, the dominant paint choice was overwhelmingly pastel. These soft, muted, often chalky hues define the palette for homeowners seeking contemporary, soothing interiors. The spectrum included delicate pinks, powder blues, seafoam greens, lavenders, and peaches, applied enthusiastically, sometimes covering entire rooms, other times used as accents or contrasting trim. Having pastel walls clearly signaled being on trend. Towering above all others in sheer ubiquity, however, was mauve. This specific, somewhat ambiguous shade, a dusty mix of pink and purple with grayish undertones, became almost synonymous with the decade's aesthetic, much like avocado green defined the 70s. Mauve permeated seemingly every space. Bedrooms, bathrooms, tiles and towels included, living rooms, upholstery and carpets, even kitchens. Its rise was partly linked to a renewed appreciation for artist Georgia O'Keeffe's desert paintings following her death, connecting mauve to sophisticated, gentle landscapes. This cemented mauve's status as the ultimate refined, romantic, and unmistakably 80s wall color, offering a sense of calm sophistication amidst the decade's bolder trends. Lucite furniture, the clearly cool trend. The 80s ushered in a fascination with sleek, futuristic materials and clear furniture, particularly pieces made from lucite, acrylic glass, perfectly captured this spirit. Transparent furniture quickly started appearing in the most stylish homes and forward-thinking offices. You'd encounter shimmering see-through coffee tables seemingly floating mid-room, elegant dining chairs looking almost invisible, or minimalist ghost end tables holding lamps. This clear aesthetic offered a dramatic departure from the heavy, dark wood furniture dominant in previous decades. Intriguingly, lucite wasn't an 80s invention. It enjoyed earlier popularity during the Art Deco era of the 1930s-40s. However, the 1980s rediscovered its potential, polishing it up and focusing on its clean lines and modern appeal. A major part of its allure was visual lightness. Lucite pieces took up minimal visual space, making them ideal for smaller rooms or creating an open, airy atmosphere. They blended seamlessly with other popular 80s materials like chrome, glass, and brass, and provided a cool counterpoint to bold colors or patterns. And the novelty factor furniture you could see right through was undeniably appealing. Whether manifesting as a sleek waterfall console table, minimalist nesting tables, or strikingly sculptural chairs, Lucite made a clear statement: modern, chic, and undeniably 80s. Memphis design, the wild child of 80s aesthetics. If one design movement captured the exuberant, playful, rule-breaking spirit of the 80s, it was Memphis design. Originating not in Tennessee, but Milan, Italy, led by Ettore Sottsass in the early 80s, its name was reportedly inspired by a Bob Dylan song. Memphis was essentially a rebellion against perceived good taste and minimalist sterility. It joyfully embraced bright, often clashing primary and pastel colors. It celebrated bold, asymmetrical geometric shapes, triangles colliding with circles, angled lines, stacked forms, all interacting unexpectedly. Perhaps most distinctively, Memphis incorporated playful, almost cartoonish patterns like random squiggles, the bacterio print, zigzags, polka dots, and blocks of contrasting color, mashed together in a high-energy visual mix. The style was deliberately provocative, undeniably fun, funky, and irreverent. For an instant visual, picture the iconic opening credits of Saved by the Bell. That vibrant explosion of shapes and patterns is pure Memphis. While its direct influence on mainstream furniture was relatively brief, its impact resonated powerfully through graphic design, fashion, music videos, and TV sets throughout the late 80s and early 90s, capturing a youthful, anti-establishment vibe. Whether admired for its audacity or seen as just quirky, Memphis design left an indelible mark as one of the decade's most distinctive visual languages. Floral patterns, an indoor garden everywhere. The 1980s didn't just like floral patterns, it embraced them with obsessive passion, deploying them liberally everywhere. This wasn't subtle, it was full floral immersion. Coordinating motifs across multiple elements: wallpaper, sofas, armchairs, lampshades, even kitchen canisters was the true 80s way, creating spaces like intensely cultivated indoor gardens. Styles varied widely. Delicate, small-scale pastel roses and sprigs, influenced by Laura Ashley, offered sweetness and tradition. Conversely, large-scale, almost abstract florals and bolder, vibrant palettes, think big poppies or stylized tropical flowers, tapped into the decade's more expressive side. Regardless of style, florals felt ubiquitous. Home decor magazines and showrooms overflowed with blossoms. At the time, this look was perceived as cozy, charming, inviting, and sophisticated. While the sheer density might seem overwhelming today, back then, floral patterns were the ultimate signifier of a warm, comfortable, lived-in home, deeply defining the visual texture of the decade and bringing the garden indoors, often all at once and on every surface. Heart-shaped tubs, the ultimate romantic soak. Few fixtures evoke the 80s blend of aspiration, romance, and slight kitsch like the heart-shaped bathtub. These dramatically oversized, distinctively curved tubs became the ultimate symbol of couple-focused luxury and indulgent bathing. You likely encountered them in popular culture, heavily featured in Pocono's honeymoon resort commercials or luxury hotel suite ads, even if not in homes you knew. These tubs transcended mere function. They made a bold, unambiguous statement about romance and luxury. Cheesy? Perhaps. Tacky? To modern eyes, often yes. But in the maximalist 80s, where bigger meant better and thematic design was celebrated, they fit right in. Interestingly, the first one appeared back in 1968, installed by resort owner Morris Wilkins in Pennsylvania as a playful gimmick for honeymooners. The novelty proved popular, spreading beyond resorts. By the 80s, heart-shaped tubs were installed in upscale private residences, often placed prominently in spacious master suites, sometimes elevated, surrounded by mirrors, or under skylights to maximize the romantic ambience. While potentially comical today, during their heyday, they were perceived as the pinnacle of luxurious, playful indulgence, a bubbly icon of 80s aspirational romance. Extravagant drapes and lace curtains, the layered look. Few trends embodied the 80s more is more philosophy like extravagant drapes layered over delicate lace curtains. This wasn't simple window dressing. It was a statement of formality and perceived luxury. Think massive, heavy curtains in opulent fabrics like velvet or satin, often in deep jewel tones or popular pastels like mauve, stretching ceiling to floor and pooling dramatically. Functionality took a back seat to fashion and grandeur. Embellishments were equally over the top. Elaborate tiebacks with thick braided cords and chunky tassels cinched the drapes aside. Above, elaborate valances were practically mandatory. Complex swags, cascading jabots, or formal pelmets added yet another layer of fabric and intricate detail, evoking stately homes or theaters. Peeking from beneath these heavy outer layers were invariably sheer, delicate lace curtains, offering a softening contrast, filtering light, and adding traditional, romantic elegance. This specific pairing, the heavy, textured drapes combined with light, airy lace undercurtains, became the undisputed power couple of 80s window fashion. Seen everywhere from suburban homes to TV sets, it was the go-to formula for a properly dressed window, perfectly embodying the era's love for layering, texture, and unapologetic decorative excess. Entertainment centers, the command center of media. In the 80s living room, the entertainment center reigned supreme. It wasn't merely furniture, it was the room's focal point, the technological command center, a veritable shrine to the expanding universe of home media. Often absolutely colossal, these units frequently spanned an entire wall, their towering presence a practical necessity. They housed the diverse, bulky array of electronic components and media formats defining the era: vinyl LPs, burgeoning stacks of cassettes, the essential VCR, amidst the VHS versus Beta battle, a proudly displayed turntable, perhaps early game consoles like Atari, and those impressively large, boxy stereo speakers demanding substantial enclosures. Typically constructed from particle board clad in wood veneer, oak being a perennial favorite. These sprawling units featured complex configurations of shelves, dedicated compartments, and cubbies. They aimed to organize and proudly display every gadget. Higher-end models often sported glass-paneled doors, sometimes smoked or leaded, secured with satisfyingly clickable magnetic push latches, though notorious fingerprint magnets. More than just functional storage, the entertainment center was a status symbol, a testament to embracing modern tech. It was the central hub where music, movies, and video games converged, a massive monument to the 80s media landscape. Indoor houseplants, the great green takeover. Walking into a typical 1980s home often felt like entering a flourishing greenhouse. The love for indoor plants, rooted in the 70s, exploded into a pervasive cultural phenomenon throughout the 80s. Homes weren't just decorated with a few plants. They teamed with them, transforming living rooms, kitchens, and especially coveted sunrooms into verdant sanctuaries. Cultivating an impressive indoor jungle became a point of pride. Certain plants achieved iconic status. Ubiquitous spider plants dangled offspring from macrame hangers, a 70s craft thriving in the 80s. Lush Boston ferns spilled over bookshelves. Towering ficus trees stood sentinel in sunny corners. Durable snake plants added verticality, and trailing pothose vines cascaded from high shelves. This obsession influenced home design itself, with new construction often featuring dedicated sunrooms or garden windows to maximize light and space for botanical collections. The overarching ethos was about dissolving the indoor-outdoor boundary, bringing nature's calming presence inside. This passion also heavily influenced decor patterns. Fabrics for bedding and upholstery, plus wallpaper and shower curtains, frequently sported bold leafy prints, tropical motifs like palm fronds or bamboo, and vibrant botanical illustrations, extending the lush aesthetic even to sunless rooms. The 80s truly elevated houseplants from simple accessories to essential, living components of home life, representing vitality, style, and a widespread desire to connect with the natural world. From ficus trees to floral couches, the 80s loved bringing nature indoors. What was the biggest plant or boldest nature-inspired pattern you remember having or wishing you had back then? Share your greenest memory. Brass fixtures and decor, the golden touch that tarnished. If one metallic finish defined 80s home decor, it was undoubtedly brass. Its presence was pervasive, adding shine, warmth, and perceived luxury to seemingly everything. Brass elements proliferated throughout homes, gleaming on light fixtures, lamps, chandeliers, adorning cabinet hardware and doorknobs, comprising fireplace tools, holding candles, framing pictures, and even forming countless small decorative objects. Miniature brass animals like swans or geese were popular bookshelf inhabitants. This bright, golden glow was intended to elevate the ordinary, making spaces feel fancier and more sophisticated according to prevailing tastes. However, this lustrous appeal had significant drawbacks. Genuine brass required regular, diligent polishing with specialized cleaners, like Brasso, to prevent tarnishing, which dulled its shine and caused greenish spots, a chore often neglected. Compounding the issue, much 80s brass decor wasn't solid, but merely brass-plated over cheaper metal. This thin plating was susceptible to wear, scratches, flaking, or peeling, revealing the less attractive base underneath. Despite these maintenance challenges and durability issues, during its peak, brass was an undisputed symbol of 80s elegance and contemporary style, even if its gleam required constant effort. Skirting on furniture, hiding legs in ruffled style. Furniture skirting, a trend with 70s roots, truly flourished and perhaps peaked in the 1980s. This practice involved dressing furniture, particularly beds, sofas, armchairs, and ottomans, in fabric skirts extending all the way to the floor, completely concealing the legs. Driven by a desire for a softer, more traditional, or simply finished aesthetic, it ensured no unsightly legs were visible. These skirts were rarely sleek. They typically featured gathers, pleats, like tailored box pleats, or abundant ruffles, adding volume and texture. Fabrics often coordinated with other room textiles, echoing popular floral prints or pastel solids. Beds were almost universally outfitted with practical dust ruffles, while upholstered seating commonly sported integrated skirts. Initially, this look projected cozy charm or traditional formality. However, living with skirted furniture meant dealing with significant dust accumulation in the fabric folds and the frustrating tendency for these skirts to act as black holes, swallowing small objects like remote controls, socks, or toys for extended periods. Even some unexpected pieces like end tables occasionally got skirted. While its popularity might seem elusive today, furniture skirting was widely perceived as an elegant and homey touch during the 80s, a quintessential detail illustrating how even furniture often got fully dressed in that era. Wall-to-wall carpeting, the plush foundation. In the 80s, wall-to-wall carpeting wasn't just an option. It was widely considered the gold standard for home comfort and style. Standard practice involved covering significant portions, often entire houses including stairs, with carpet frequently laid right over beautiful hardwood floors. The ideal 80s carpet wasn't thin. It was characterized by plushness, thickness, and undeniable softness underfoot. This devotion stemmed from perceived benefits: warmth, sound absorption for quieter homes, and a comfortable surface. Crucially, carpeting was also a primary way to introduce color and texture. While neutrals existed, the 80s fully embraced bolder carpet choices like mauve, dusty rose, various blues, and forest green. However, the most iconic and memorable carpet color was undoubtedly teal. That rich, deep blue-green hue appeared everywhere, lending a fashionable, dramatic edge to living rooms and bedrooms. Though preferences have largely shifted back to hard floors, in the 80s, wall-to-wall carpet reigned supreme, wrapping homes in cozy softness and representing modern luxury, making rooms feel finished and comfortable according to the era's standards. Mirrored surfaces, reflecting the 80s glam. Beyond paint and wallpaper, another surface treatment that undeniably defined 80s glamour was the extensive use of mirrors. We're not just talking about a practical mirror above the vanity or near the front door. The 80s embraced mirrors as a full-scale decorative material, often covering surprisingly large areas to maximize shine and create an illusion of spaciousness. Mirrored walls became a significant trend, particularly popular in dining rooms, living rooms, entryways, home bars, and even bedrooms. The intention was to visually double the space, bounce light around, and inject a dose of high-wattage glamour. These mirrored panels weren't always simple clear glass. They were often offered in smoked gray or bronze tints, or sometimes featured subtle etched patterns or beveled edges for added detail. Another incredibly common application was mirrored closet doors, frequently spanning entire walls in bedrooms, usually framed with that signature shiny brass or gold-toned metal. The reflective trend even extended to furniture itself. Coffee tables, end tables, console tables, nightstands, dressers, and occasionally even bed headboards could be found entirely clad in mirrored panels, sometimes arranged in geometric patterns. This look added an unmistakable touch of Hollywood Regency's sparkle and flash, fitting seamlessly with other popular materials like lucite and brass, contributing to the decade's overall sense of opulence. The obvious downside, immediately apparent to anyone living with them, was the relentless battle against fingerprints, smudges, streaks, and dust, all of which were highly visible on the reflective surfaces. Keeping large mirrored expanses pristine required constant vigilance. Yet, for a significant period, lavish use of mirrors was considered the absolute height of chic, perfectly reflecting the decade's love for shine, drama, and creating glamorous illusions. Hollywood vanity lighting, bathing in the bulb's glow. Step into an 80s bathroom, and the Hollywood vanity light likely transports you back instantly. This iconic setup featured unmistakable rows of large, exposed, globe-shaped incandescent bulbs mounted on a strip fixture, running horizontally or vertically around the mirror. Directly inspired by actors' backstage dressing rooms, the design aimed to imbue daily grooming rituals with glamour and star power. Everyone wanted that Tinseltown magic. Fixtures were typically finished in coordinating 80s materials like ubiquitous honey oak or shiny brass. Energy efficiency was non-existent. Each bulb was a powerhouse, often 60 to 100 watts, illuminating bathrooms with near-surgical intensity. While feeling glamorous, the harsh, direct light wasn't always flattering or accurate for applying makeup, potentially leading to surprises in natural daylight. Despite these drawbacks, the Hollywood vanity light was more than functional. It cultivated a feeling, elevating everyday routines to seem more special and luxurious. Was it decidedly over the top? Absolutely. But in the unapologetically bold landscape of 1980s design, over the top was often precisely the point. Neon accents, bringing the arcade glow home. Summoning the visual essence of the 80s inevitably brings the vibrant glow of neon light to mind. While long used commercially, the latter 80s saw neon migrate directly into homes, adding a jolt of urban cool. Though not as widespread as mauve paint, neon accents made bold statements, favored particularly in teenagers' bedrooms, the ultimate sign of cool, basement rec rooms, home bars, or spaces embracing a cutting-edge aesthetic. Neon wasn't just illumination, it was deployed as luminous art. Glowing tubes formed playful geometric squiggles, stylized palm trees, or pink flamingos evoking a Miami Vice vibe, jagged lightning bolts adding rock and roll energy, or even names, typically in electrifying hot pink, lime green, or electric blue. It instantly injected energy, vibrant color, and a distinct, slightly rebellious edge into decor. Even without owning neon art, its cultural presence was inescapable via commercials, MTV music videos, and movie scenes set in trendy spaces. Flashy, loud, impossible to ignore, and unforgettable, much like the decade itself, neon became a glowing symbol of the bold, optimistic, high-energy 80s spirit. You ever stop and think about how houses nowadays seem a little generic compared to the places we grew up in or remember from back then? It ain't just rosy retrospection, folks. Lots of nifty, practical, and downright charming bits and pieces of home design have just sort of faded away. Let's take a stroll down memory lane and peek at some features that really gave a house its character. Luggage hideaway, or card table nook. Ever explore an older house and find a funny little door next to a hallway closet? Usually narrow, maybe a foot wide, and short, less than half a standard door's height. You're not alone in wondering about its purpose. It clearly wasn't for hiding people. Digging into old house lore suggests these mini closets served a few functions. Some call it a luggage hideaway. Others insist it was for folding card tables or even rollaway beds. Honestly, they're likely all correct. Back in 1950s and earlier, card tables were common. Families used them for bridge, poker, or board games. So having a slim, deep space, maybe 3 feet back to stash one made sense. Whatever its name, that little door is a clever relic from when storage was about pure function. Got one? It's a piece of mid-century practical thinking. Dumbwaiter. Here's another clever invention from yesteryear that simplified life in older, multi-story homes, the dumbwaiter. Don't confuse these with large service elevators and mansions. Residential dumbwaiters were compact, practical, and usually hidden. Homes might have 2 types. One near the fireplace for hauling coal or firewood from the basement, saving much back strain. Another, more versatile type might run from basement to attic with doors in the kitchen, hallway, and maybe upstairs. These small lifts weren't just for show. They were useful for moving laundry, dishes, or supplies between floors without carrying heavy loads up and downstairs. Over time, many were removed during renovations, leaving clues like trapdoors or tall, narrow closets. Thinking of installing one? Maybe avoid complex electricals unless you enjoy puzzles. A simple, hand-cranked version captures the old-world convenience without the fuss. Pittsburgh potties, function over form. Down in the basements of some older homes, particularly in industrial towns like Pittsburgh, you might encounter a rather stark sight. A lone toilet, often standing freely with no surrounding walls or even a nearby sink. This, folks, is the Pittsburgh potty. Its purpose was purely practical, mainly for mill workers or miners returning home covered in grime, allowing them to clean up downstairs before entering the main living areas. This basement fixture emerged from the practical necessities of industrial life. Workers in physically demanding and dirty industries like steel production or coal mining needed a place to relieve themselves and often perform an initial cleanup immediately upon returning home, thereby preventing coal dust, grease, and other industrial residues from being tracked into the cleaner, main living quarters upstairs. Privacy was secondary to functionality, hence the frequent lack of stalls or even walls. While often lacking a dedicated sink, these toilets were usually located near a basement utility sink or laundry tub, which served for washing hands and clothes. Though named for Pittsburgh due to its prevalence there, similar functional basement toilets existed in other industrial centers facing similar sanitation challenges for their workforce. Shoe scraper. All right, let's step back to a time when roads weren't exactly smooth asphalt ribbons. Wander through older European towns or early American settlements. And near the front door, you'd spot a tough little contraption, the shoe scraper. This wasn't just some decorative piece, it was a downright necessity. Before paved streets and cars were common, city thoroughfares were often a messy mix of dirt, grime, and plenty of contributions from our four-legged equine friends. Yes, that mud often had more substance. These scrapers, usually sturdy cast iron, gave folks a fighting chance to scrape the muck off their footwear before tracking it inside. Here in the US, some folks apparently nicknamed it Jerry's front door, perhaps feeling it deserved more respect. But as the 20th century rolled in and cars replaced horses, these practical tools began to disappear. During the World Wars, many scrapers, particularly in the UK, were pulled up for scrap metal drives. The sad irony is much of that collected iron reportedly wasn't needed and just sat in piles. And so, the useful shoe scraper quietly became a relic. Conversation pits. Oh, the conversation pit. If you remember the 1970s, this was the height of groovy home design. Literally the center of attention. A sunken living area below the main floor, decked out in plush carpet or cushions. The idea was togetherness, encouraging people to gather, face each other, and talk. No phones, no dominant TV, just people, maybe fondue and conversation. Often likened to a mullet hairstyle, business around the edges, party in the middle. Jokes about empty indoor pools were common, especially with colorful cushions and shag carpet. Despite their cozy appeal, they had drawbacks. The constant warning, "Watch your step," usually came too late. They were tripping hazards. Plus, inflexibility was an issue. Rearranging furniture? Impossible. Changing the layout meant major floor repairs. Conversation pits faded, leaving memories some nostalgic, others maybe slightly bruised from a fall. Big front porches. There surely was a time when life moved slower and the big front porch was the heart of the home. It wasn't just architecture, it was a lifestyle. Think of deep porches with wooden railings, maybe fancy trim, perhaps a swing moving gently. That was your social network before screens dominated. Back then, especially in neighborhoods like Chicago's Near West Side, families gathered there in evenings to cool off and chat with passersby. Nobody had air conditioning, so sitting outside made sense. It wasn't just about comfort, it was connection. You'd wave hello, discuss weather, or tell a kid off the lawn, all from your porch. But once air conditioning became standard, porches started vanishing from new builds. Today, sitting out front watching folks might seem nosy, but once it was the spirit of the neighborhood. Home intercoms. Long before everyone carried a phone, the high-tech way to communicate across a large house was the home intercom system. Remember those? Wired into the walls, with a speaker box in each main room. On paper, a brilliant idea. Parents could summon kids for dinner without yelling upstairs. Kids could check in from their rooms. And aimed to make life easier. And sometimes it did. Of course, mothers found unique uses. Ours loved blasting the FM radio feature while cleaning. But honestly, for getting attention, good old-fashioned yelling often worked best. There was also the sneaky side, like locking the kitchen unit on to eavesdrop on adult conversations. And the startling side, like early morning wake-up calls using jarring recordings instead of music. Trying to remove one now, it's a wiring nightmare. Nowadays, we're back to the original wireless system. Stand and holler. Dinner. Still effective. Call it hollercom. Picture rails. Picture rails are one of those wonderfully clever features of older homes you might not notice until you realize you have them. These slim molding strips, usually running near the ceiling, were the smart way to hang art without hammering nails into plaster walls. Anyone who spackled nail holes or struggled with crooked frames knows their value. They were practical and elegant, allowing easy rearrangement of pictures, and the rail itself added refinement. If you have them, you're lucky. It's a hidden gem. Hooks just rest on the rail's top edge. While sleek modern hooks exist, maybe don't hang anything too heavy. Combined with bold colors, vintage furniture, and striking art, picture rails bring a room to life, echoing the past, maybe even improving on it. Laundry chutes. Back in the day, many well-designed homes featured a brilliant little convenience hidden in a hallway or bathroom wall, the laundry chute. It seems simple now, but in mid-century homes, this was often standard. A small door, a quick toss, and dirty clothes vanished down towards a laundry room, usually in the basement. For busy families, it was a genuine time saver. During the 70s, the chute wasn't just useful, it could be fun. Kids loved tossing socks down, and occasionally you'd hear, "Honey, have you seen the cat?" Yes, curious pets and toys sometimes took the ride too. Mostly, it just made chores easier and slightly more entertaining. We might joke about clothes disappearing, but it was incredibly convenient. No overflowing hampers, no lugging baskets downstairs. Just one drop, and it was someone else's problem for a bit. Add suction today, and it'd be a modern marvel worth reviving. Transom windows. Transom windows are a lovely, subtle feature in older houses that quietly improve a space. These are windows set above a door or another window. Originally, before widespread air conditioning, they served to admit more natural light and aid air circulation. You could open the transom to vent warm air, even with the main door closed. While uncommon in new builds today, mid-century homes used them effectively, perhaps over sliding glass doors or porch entries. Some custom homes even placed them across multiple sliding doors. The effect was a bright, airy feeling connecting indoors and outdoors. You get glimpses of treetops and sky, bringing soft light into the room all day. Usually, no blinds were needed. They offered light and privacy simultaneously. It's a shame mass-produced homes often miss this built-in grace. If you have transoms, treasure them. They're little windows into thoughtful past construction. Secret room. The allure of a secret room. There's something fascinating about the idea, isn't there? Especially one hidden behind a bookcase or off a winding back staircase in an old Victorian home. These hidden spaces ignite the imagination. What would you use one for? Hiding valuables? An escape? Or just the thrill of knowing it exists? One famous example is the Winchester Mystery House in San Jose, California. Built in the late 1800s by Sarah Winchester, heiress to the rifle fortune, this sprawling mansion is legendary. With stairs to nowhere, doors into walls, and hidden rooms, it's said Sarah designed it to confuse ghosts of those killed by Winchester rifles. True or not, the house is a bizarre monument to grief, guilt, and imagination. In the Victorian era, secret rooms weren't uncommon, often for valuables or private retreats. But Sarah Winchester's might have served a far stranger purpose. Root cellars. Root cellars, there's a practical and nostalgic blast from the past. Back through the 1970s and earlier, especially in rural areas or older towns, these underground storage spots were essential. Often looking like storybook hobbit holes with round doors and earthen walls, they felt quaint but were highly functional. Dug deep, they used the Earth's natural insulation for a steady, cool temperature year-round, no electricity needed. Families stored potatoes, carrots, onions, apples, and canned goods for months. It was nature's refrigerator powered by physics. Styles varied, walk-in rooms under houses, simple pits in the yard. Some doubled as Cold War shelters. Modern fridges replaced them, but those who had one remember the ultimate pantry, great hide-and-seek spot, and a reassuring stash. High ceilings. If your home boasts high ceilings, congratulations. It's one of the most impressive, luxurious features possible. You'll never worry if that tall bookcase fits. But like all great things, they have literal highs and lows. Historically, lofty spaces signaled status and wealth. In Georgian and Victorian times, higher ceilings meant grander impressions. Before HVAC, they aided passive cooling. Heat rises, leaving living areas cooler for the wealthy. Lofts brought real fun, tossing laundry or snacks downstairs over the railing. Why not? The space invites drama. Tall curtains, enormous art, maybe even an indoor swing. But reality intrudes. That glorious 15-foot ceiling makes changing a light bulb an expedition. Elegant, yes. Practical? Only with a tall ladder and steady nerves. Kitchen fireplaces. Before stainless steel stoves and digital coffee makers, the kitchen relied on one central feature, the kitchen fireplace. These large, brick-lined hearths weren't just for warmth. They were the home's operational heart. Brewing coffee, boiling water, roasting chicken, the fireplace handled it all. On a cold morning, nothing felt cozier than sitting beside it while the fire crackled and cooking aromas filled the air. Kitchen fireplaces were built tough, with deep fireboxes and heavy iron equipment for large pots and spits. Before central heating, this was the family's winter gathering spot for chores, meals, and conversation. A wild historical tidbit: turnspit dogs, small canines allegedly used to rotate spits over the fire early rotisserie motors. This hearth was the center of activity, warmth, and connection. Razor blade disposal slots. Out of sight, out of mind, but still there. Ever notice a tiny, mysterious slot cut into the metal back of an old bathroom medicine cabinet? It wasn't for secret messages or ventilation. That was a dedicated disposal slot for used razor blades. Back when men shaved with double-edged safety razors, dropping the dangerously sharp used blades into this slot, which typically just led into the empty wall cavity between studs, was considered a safer alternative than tossing them in the trash bin. Renovators beware. This seemingly innocuous feature was a direct response to the widespread use of replaceable double-edged safety razor blades popular in the mid-20th century. These individual blades were incredibly sharp and posed a significant cutting hazard if simply discarded in household waste, potentially injuring family members or sanitation workers. The disposal slot offered a convenient and, at the time, seemingly safe solution, dropping the used blades into the void within the wall framing. Out of sight, out of mind. However, this practice means that potentially hundreds, if not thousands, of sharp, rusty blades can accumulate inside the wall cavity over the years, creating an unexpected and dangerous surprise for anyone undertaking bathroom renovations or demolition work in older homes. Floor grates. Before central heating and HVAC vents were standard, homes used something far more charming: floor grates. These cast-iron beauties were the ancestors of today's vents, often found in older houses. More than functional, they were pieces of art. Ornate, heavy, with intricate scrollwork, they added elegance while letting warm air rise from below. Of course, for kids, they were irresistible portals for coins, marbles, and toys vanishing into the abyss. Some families view them as time capsules. Modern vents are dull and safe. Old grates add style, history, and mystery. Okay, here are the expanded descriptions for each point. adding more detail and context while keeping the original numbering. Knob and tube wiring, a shocking reminder of the past. Lurking behind the walls of very old houses, typically built between the 1880s and the 1930s or 40s, you might find knob and tube wiring. This early method of electrical wiring involved running individual copper wires, insulated with rubberized cloth, on porcelain knobs nailed to the joists and through porcelain tubes where they passed through wood framing. Crucially, it lacks a ground wire. The insulation becomes brittle over time, and it's generally considered unsafe for modern electrical demands. This pioneering wiring system separated the hot and neutral wires, running them parallel several inches apart. The porcelain knobs held the wires securely away from the wooden structural members, using airspace as an insulator, while the porcelain tubes protected the wires where they had to pass through joists or studs. While innovative for its time, knob and tube wiring presents significant risks today. The original cloth and rubber insulation degrades, becoming brittle and potentially flaking off, exposing live wires. It lacks a safety ground wire, essential for modern appliances. Furthermore, it was not designed for the heavy electrical loads of contemporary households and can overheat. Modifications or insulation packed around it improperly can create serious fire hazards, making its replacement a priority during renovations for safety and insurability. Ice doors, pre-refrigeration cooling. Spot a small, sturdy, insulated door on the outside of an old house, often near the kitchen, usually paired with a corresponding latching door on the inside wall. You've likely found an ice door. Before electric refrigerators were common, families used insulated ice boxes. This clever two-door system allowed the iceman to deliver hefty blocks of ice directly into the box's compartment from outside, minimizing mess and preventing precious cool air from escaping. This system was a crucial part of domestic life in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. The iceman's regular delivery was essential for food preservation. The external door allowed him to replenish the ice supply without tracking mud or water through the house, maintaining household cleanliness. The corresponding interior door gave the homeowner access to the chilled compartment. These ice doors were typically constructed robustly, often made of thick wood or metal, and heavily insulated to be as airtight as possible, maximizing the longevity of the ice block. Finding one today is a tangible link to a time before widespread electrification revolutionized the kitchen and daily routines. Many have since been sealed up, painted over, or removed entirely. Servant staircase. Ever find a narrow, steep staircase hidden behind a door in a truly old house? You might have discovered a servant staircase, a fascinating feature of Victorian-era homes. These weren't meant for display. Their purpose was invisibility. Back when homes had live-in staff, these separate stairs, tucked behind the kitchen or down a side hall, allowed maids and cooks to move quietly between floors without disturbing the homeowners or guests. It was the 1800s incognito mode. While a symbol of social division, these stairs were also practical for efficiency. Today, many are sealed off or deemed unsafe due to steepness, narrowness, and lack of modern code compliance. But finding one intact feels like stepping into a time capsule and perhaps the perfect hide-and-seek spot. Just prepare for a leg workout. Built-in phone nooks, a dedicated communication space. Remember when the telephone was a hefty piece of equipment tethered to the wall? Many older homes, especially mid-century ones, thoughtfully included built-in niches or alcoves, usually in a central hallway. These little nooks were perfectly sized to hold the bulky phone itself, maybe a thick local phone book underneath, and perhaps a notepad and pencil. Some even featured a small built-in seat for those long, cord-tethered conversations. These dedicated spaces underscored the importance of the telephone as the primary communication hub of the household before the advent of portable devices. Often strategically placed in high-traffic areas like hallways or near the kitchen, the phone nook ensured calls could be easily answered and messages relayed. The design varied from simple recessed squares to more elaborate arched niches, sometimes lined with wood or tile. The inclusion of a small bench or seat acknowledged that phone calls could be lengthy affairs, requiring a comfortable spot. As technology evolved and phones became smaller and wireless, these nooks lost their original purpose, often being repurposed for displaying decorative items, holding mail, or simply being drywalled over during renovations, leaving behind only a subtle architectural hint of a bygone era. Stained glass. Stained glass isn't just for old churches or grandma's door. It's a masterpiece of art, history, and craft, arguably the 1800s version of mood lighting. Before LEDs or smart bulbs, light itself was an artistic medium, and stained glass was a crown jewel. Initially for the wealthy elite in cathedrals and grand homes, skilled artisans pieced together luminous puzzles. During the Victorian era, a romantic medieval revival brought stained glass into everyday homes, adorning balcony windows or transoms. It offered beauty and privacy, letting sunlight filter in while distorting views. As the sun moved, vibrant patterns danced across rooms like living paintings. Public buildings like libraries and courthouses also used it for decoration and commemorating history or heroes. It turned light into art. Mudrooms. If you grew up hearing, "Take your shoes off," you understand the mudroom's genius. This humble space was a lifesaver in old homes, a buffer between the outdoors and clean rugs. Designed to stop dirt, snow, and whatever kids dragged in, mudrooms were the MVP of cleanliness. Usually near a back or side entrance, they acted like a domestic airlock, keeping warm air in and grime out. The name isn't fancy, but the purpose was clear: stop mud at the door. A good mudroom had coat hooks, a shoe rack, maybe a bench for boot removal, and perhaps storage. No carpets here, just tough, easy mop tile or linoleum. Small? Yes. Stylish? Sometimes. Effective? Absolutely. It maintained peace and kept floors cleaner. Milk chutes. Milk chutes, those small, forgotten doors built into the sides of mid-century homes, were once part of daily life when a milkman visited regularly. More than just practical, they felt magical to kids, like a treasure chest refilled each morning with glass bottles of fresh milk, maybe cream or cheese. The design was clever. 2 small doors, one outside for the milkman, one inside for the family, with a small cavity between them protecting deliveries from weather and pests. Some fancier versions had dials for orders, a vintage take on today's online delivery. Milkmen were routine heroes, braving dawn, dogs, and weather. Today, most don't know what those doors were for, but those who grew up with them recall the charm. Now repurposed or sealed, perhaps milk chutes could return in our home delivery era. Good design often resurfaces. Built-in ironing boards. Ever open a narrow wall cabinet in an old house and have a plank swing down unexpectedly? You likely found a built-in ironing board, a great space saver. These clever closets were essential when crisp clothes were non-negotiable. In the early to mid-20th century, having one tucked neatly in the wall, usually near the kitchen or laundry, was a homemaker's dream. A simple flick folded the board down, ready for action. No dragging out a wobbly board. It was always there, but they served other uses too. Kids saw pirate planks or forts. Grandmothers used them as extra counters. Stocked with starch and the iron, they were domestic Swiss Army knives, representing an era where convenience and tidiness were ingeniously integrated, making chores slightly smoother. Push-button switches. Long before dimmers and smart bulbs, turning on lights had a satisfying click-clack sound, thanks to push-button switches, the ASMR of the early 20th century. As electricity became common, these replaced old pull cords, bringing function, charm, and a dash of flair. Each switch had two buttons, top for on, bottom for off, toggling with a crisp mechanical snap. Peek behind the plate, and you might see a small spark like electric demons awakening. Creepy? Maybe. Cool? Definitely. People adorned them with decorative plates in brass, porcelain, or mother of pearl, making a simple switch a statement piece. Yet, paired with old knob and tube wiring, they weren't the safest, prone to failure and fire hazards. Today's toggle switches are safer, but lack the soul. Push-button switches didn't just light a room, they illuminated an era. Ceiling beds, disappearing beds, space-saving innovation. While it sounds like something out of a cartoon, beds that lowered from the ceiling were a real, albeit uncommon, space-saving solution. Different from Murphy beds that folded into a wall, these disappearing or ceiling beds often used a system of counterweights and pulleys hidden above, allowing the bed platform to be raised flush against the ceiling during the day. Fold-down legs provided support when it was lowered for sleeping. This ingenious, though less frequently encountered, design aimed to maximize usable floor space, particularly in small apartments or single-room dwellings where living and sleeping areas needed to coexist. Unlike the wall-folding Murphy bed, the ceiling bed utilized vertical space. The mechanism often involved substantial counterweights concealed within the ceiling or attic space, connected via ropes or chains and pulleys to the bed platform. This allowed the bed to be raised and lowered with relative ease. When elevated, it ideally blended seamlessly with the ceiling, freeing up the entire room below for daytime activities. When lowered, sturdy legs, often hinged to fold away, provided stability. While a clever concept, the complexity, installation requirements, and potential maintenance likely contributed to their rarity compared to the simpler Murphy bed. And that concludes our fascinating tour through the homes of the past. From ingenious vintage appliances and unforgettable 80s decor to those clever lost architectural features. We hope you enjoyed this journey. What forgotten gadget, bold trend, or charming detail sparked your memories? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more nostalgia. Thanks for watching.